Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Vaza and Jay Robinson, and we picked Spain for our member state presentation. So we just wanted to kind of give a look into what we call the fallen hegemon's internal struggle between Euroscepticism and belief in the EU. And our presentation is kind of going to go from where Spain originated from, goes through the financial crisis, and kind of explores the future. And we picked Spain because we wanted to give an in-depth look into a country that, in a similar fashion to Greece, was having economic troubles within their EU membership. And we were fascinated by the relationship between Catalonia and Spain, which we'll discuss later. So here we go. So just as an introduction slide, following Francisco Franco's death in 1975, his dictatorship in Spain was transitioned into a democracy by King Carlos I, who believed in the international democratic project of the European community. Spain then signed the accession treaty in 1985, officially becoming a member state of the European Union. In the 35 years following, Spain has reaped the numerous benefits of the European Union, progressing economically, socially, and politically, among other things. Only recently, though, has the tide of populism spread across Europe and the country in general, and many Eurosceptic fears have begun to plague this once cohesive nation.
Background on Spain. Spain boasts a population of just under 47 million people, making it the fourth largest member of the EU by population. Their 83-year life expectancy and a 1.33 fertility rate have recently put strains on the government assistance programs. Approximately 89.9% of the population is of Spanish ethnicity, and 10.1% are of foreign ethnicity. Of that 10%, Romanians, Moroccans, and Ecuadorians make up a majority. Key terms to understanding the political elite and their role in society. Political elite, as described by Acemoglu and Robinson, are wealthy individuals that influence the democratic processes of government and contribute to wealth and income inequality. Acemoglu and Robinson specify that extractive political elites are those who often violate the rights of citizens and contribute to rising levels of inequality. These violations are often seen in banking and economic institutions and will affect Spain during the 2008 financial crisis. Public perception is an aggregate of individual attitudes in a population. This aggregate forms public opinion and can be changed throughout the years. The Spanish economy's most important sectors are wholesale and retail trade, transport, and accommodation and food services, which make up 23.4%. Public administration, defense, education, human health, and social work activities make up 18.9%, and industry is 17.8%. Spain's economy is 1.43 trillion US dollars in GDP. A daunting figure when considering Spain's debt is 97% of its economy. Additionally, it has an inflation rate of 1.7% and a trade balance of negative $32 billion US dollars. Intra-EU trade accounts for 67% of Spain's exports and 62% of Spain's imports. Spain from the end of Franco's rule in 1975 to prior to the economic crisis in 2008. In 1975, Spain transitioned from Franco's dictatorship to a liberal democratic state. With this, there was the development of a new political class. New political leaders consolidated the party system with the adoption of proportional representation voting and through the decentralization of state powers to regional governments. The prevailing political theory was that young democracy required strong internal power, which would be maintained by strong nationwide parties. In the 1980s, the new ruling class of Spain, through the new ruling political and economic elite, initially in the form of the Union of the Democratic Center, the UDC, coalition and political party, which was led by President Adolfo Suarez, became motivated to join the European Economic Community, the EEC. The initial movement to join the EEC was supported by the banking and business industries in Spain, because leaders recognized the economic benefits to joining the economic system. This movement to the EU would later be championed by the Socialist Party in Spain, that would become the dominant party in the country over the next 25-year period, into the present day. As the party of pro-Europeanism in the modern era of Spain, the socialists maintained support for European integration and cohesion. Due to Spanish participation in the economic system, the Spanish economy flourished from 1985 to 2008. This was characterized by a real estate boom in the country during the same period. Due to the effects of the thriving Spanish economy in this period after Franco's rule from 1975 to 2008, public opinion supported the EU and its economic abilities. This is evidenced by the success of the party in national elections. Although they lost the majority in 1996 and again in 2000, it was caused by unpopular scandals and inefficiencies, not the party's pro-Europeanism.
The Spanish financial crisis began in 2008 and continued to 2014, and its main cause, similar to the United States, was the housing bubble and the accompanying unsustainably high GDP growth rate. So basically, the Spanish government relaxed supervision of the financial sector, which allowed banks to hide a lot of earnings and kind of other loss of volatility, mislead regulators and investors, and thereby kind of drive the Spanish real estate bubble. The results of this crisis were devastating for Spain, including strong economic downturn, a severe increase in unemployment, and several bankruptcies of major companies. Later in 2012, Spain was forced to kind of join the European sovereign debt crisis when the country was unable to bail out its financial sector and had to apply for an over 100 billion euro rescue package provided by the European Stability Mechanism. So there's some other motivating factors as well that are kind of placed on the Spanish governmental elite and their desire for prosperity. So this governmental elite pushed housing ownership in the 50s and 60s and kind of instilled it into the Spanish psyche. And then it was later revealed after the financial crisis that nearly all the Spanish representatives in Congress had large investments in the housing sector, some even owning up to 20 houses. Later, this is just kind of more into the unemployment sector. So Spain had its unemployment climb in 2008 to 36%, which was, out of all of Europe, the biggest unemployment crisis. And at the end of it all, after the financial crisis struck, working-class Spaniards emerged to find that their mortgages were unpayable, their jobs had disappeared, and social services were cut. They realized they had been conned by a network of greedy politicians, kind of that political elite, who had systemically rigged basically the entire economic society using the European bailout money and kind of rigged it for themselves. And a lot of Spaniards were not happy to find that. So now we look at a case study, and this one is focused on Catalan's independence movement. So this dispute goes back to the brutal years under Franco, whose dictatorship repressed Catalonia's earlier autonomy. 4 years after his death, the region was granted a greater autonomy, and then in 2006, the Spanish government again backed its calls for independence and greater powers and financial control of the region, granting it a temporary nation status. But 4 years after that, in 2010, the status was rescinded by the Constitutional Court, which ruled that while Catalan is a nationality, it is not itself a nation. The campaign to break away from Spain has been gaining momentum since Spain's 2010 financial crisis and this kind of Constitutional Court's ruling. And Catalonia is the wealthiest and most developed region in Spain and wants its own sovereignty, as although it holds 6% of Spanish territory, it contributes 20% to Spain's GDP. So then things kind of started to heat up in 2014 as the government of Catalonia announced a referendum on the question of statehood and independence. However, the government of Spain referred the proposed referendum to the Constitutional Court, which ruled it unconstitutional in its essence. Again later, Catalonia's new president, Carles Puigdemont, announced a binding referendum on independence. And although deemed illegal by the Spanish government and Constitutional Court, the referendum was held in 2017, and results showed a 90% favor of independence, with a turnout of 43% of people. Based on this referendum result, the Parliament of Catalonia approved a resolution creating an independent republic unilaterally. And this vote kind of started the big fireworks as there was a crackdown from Madrid. There's thousands of riot police clashed with protesters and voters at polling stations and in public. And then now, since that 2017 kind of that big flare up, many of Catalonia's independence leaders were charged and given multi-year sentences for corruption, secession-related crimes, and it's kind of ignited protests through 2018 and 2019, and protests and clashes still continue today in 2020, especially in regards to the new coronavirus restrictions that Spain has placed on Catalonia. So the big thing about this case study is Catalonia is kind of trying to be that defector. The people are sick of kind of contributing a lot of development and resources and wealth to a lot of these Spanish political elites that they have seen take a lot of the European Union's funds and kind of distribute it only to themselves. And Catalonia would kind of really enjoy to be its own nation, its own represented sovereign body with the European Union. And Spain's just making that really tough because Spain doesn't want to lose this kind of cash cow, these people that contribute a lot to Spain as a country. So now we turn to Spanish policymakers' view on the EU in general. So basically, the first kind of group we'll focus on is Vox. So disaffected PP voters, the conservative group of Spain, have turned to right-wing Vox in the 2019 elections, which has vowed to fix Spain's semi-federal system. The party jumped from just under 0.2% of the last vote in 2016 to over 10%, and now has 24 members of parliament. Another strength in their platform is their nationalistic sentiment that has placed them in strict opposition to the Catalan independence movement. Vox has also argued that Spain's political elite, which it includes all other political parties in, has imposed a postmodern progressive dictatorship on the country, under which you can't speak out against a lot of kind of generally accepted liberal principles. A woman's right to an abortion, gay marriage, and multiculturalism as a few examples. For the moment, Vox's support mostly comes from that upper middle class, but a lot of Spain's political mainstream fears that Vox may try to broaden its base by tailoring its discourse to the working class. This discourse is generally focused on less taxes and smaller government, but Vox ultimately advocates its electoral program against the EU, kind of giving powers back to nation capitals and cutting back on EU agencies that, say, meddle with national sovereignty. Nevertheless, the Spanish right-wing, PP, and the Spanish far-right, Vox, were unable to win parliamentary majorities in the most recent election, which allowed the PSOE, the socialist kind of wing of the government, to form a coalition with the UP under Pedro Sanchez. And this kind of what it ultimately means is it reaffirms modern support for the EU within the policy of the Spanish parliament and kind of serves as that base support level that shows that Spain still wants to continue with the EU, even though these new right-wing populist kind of parties may ultimately not enjoy the membership within the EU.
Current EU relations and public perception. Generally, the Spanish public opinion of the EU is overwhelmingly positive. Looking to the data from the Pew Research Group, Spain and Spaniards are favorable to the EU membership by 66 to 33%. However, there are important discrepancies between the views of younger and older people in recognizing their opinions on EU relations. Age as a factor in public perception is critical. For younger Spaniards that experienced the damaging effects of the 2008 financial crisis, they see the European Union as a provider and one that can revive and support the Spanish economy and employment. This generation has experienced the EU membership in everyday life through the benefits of educational and job mobility and freedom of movement. Some adult and elderly populations see the European project as a failure, one that has been hijacked by Merkel and the rest of the German state. European Union, to them, is more of a disconnected bureaucracy that focuses more on parliamentary procedure than the plight of its people. This is due to the harder felt consequences of the financial crisis and the Euroscepticism that some older Europeans feel towards their neighbor countries. The perceptions of the EU by the political elite are separate from the perceptions of the public. Seen by the numerous political scandals in Spain in the last 2 decades, the political elite have been able to consistently manipulate the power of the Spanish government and economically benefit within the framework of the EU. Therefore, they still support EU membership. This is evident by the success of both parties in maintaining support for EU memberships. Conclusion. While the Spanish governmental system has proven to be flawed, specifically citing the corruption and role of the political elite in the system, neither those in the public that support the government or those that are against the government are in favor of withdrawing from the EU system. EU membership for the Spanish political elite has provided extended economic benefits, and the EU membership for the general public has provided a safety net. In conclusion, Spain will continue to be mainly pro-EU as they value their freedom over most other countries as a result of Franco's dictatorship. In addition, despite widespread corruption and inefficiencies in governments that are managed by the political elite class, a majority of Spaniards continue to support Spanish membership into the EU. In the future, Spain must answer many tough questions. How will Spain manage growing support for the Catalan independence and their own European involvement? How will the Spanish public preserve economic vitality at the national level that is supported by EU membership if they intend to fix their broken political system that is created by political elites that embrace the EU? Only time will tell.